lost my husband. I did not want to stay in Florida without him, and my daughter is here with her two little ones, one who has been blessed by Kathleen Jacobs because he's certainly been coached to be a fine young student thanks to her good work. And while I was looking for work, I thought the best way to learn about a community would be to substitute teach in the Catholic school system. I wanted to see, really has courtesy left our youth when is it just technology that's making us so cursory and not polite to one another? Are we still teaching the same values? And I was happy to see that we really were. So one day I was in a third grade, and there were probably 20 students of varied activity, many of them climbing over the desk up and down and running around and being rambunctious. But one was very dark and sullen. He would not at all participate in class, wouldn't take out his book, wouldn't smile, wouldn't talk. And the young teacher, they have two teachers in the class, who was in that classroom, was an outstanding teacher. And then she got called out for some testing, so I was left alone with these youngsters. When a young man goes to the restroom at the school, I find this a little bit odd that the ladies don't have to be watched. You have to go because they're afraid they'll, mess up the restrooms with soap and whatnot. Well, I had the privilege of taking this young, quiet, unhappy lad, Gabriel, to the boys' room. And he would climb up in the stall and up on the ceiling and down and waiting for a reaction. But having been one of 6 kids with 4 brothers, I thought, he's not getting the attention he wants from me. So I just stood and waited until he came out. And he wasn't happy that I hadn't hollered at him or anything. So we walked back to the classroom together and we got outside the door and he said, "You go in." And I said, "You go in." And he was surprised. It was Lent, and on the bulletin board all around the classroom were these buckets with each of the kids' names on them. And I said, what's Lent about? And they said, giving up, we can't have candy. I said, well, yeah, that's true. What else? And one young lady said, it's about doing things, too. I said, yeah. And the bucket saying was, have you filled somebody's bucket today? So we played this game. Whenever you do something that shows regard for another person, I'll put a little star in your bucket. And at the end of the day, the students who had the most buckets got to go to lunch with the teacher. So I thought, here's Gabriel not participating, and all the other students were pretty busy talking. And I said, Gabriel, one thing I've noticed about you is you never interrupt. He didn't talk, so he didn't interrupt. I said, you have regard because you're listening. And he started to smile. And I said, the first star goes in your bucket. Well, he took out his book, and he started to participate, and the students next to him started to contribute with him. And I think it reminded me, in my mind at the time, I thought, fear is usually when love is not acting. And he's afraid of something, and that's probably why he's acting that way. Maybe if we can reverse it by showing love, because Christ always said, unless you're like little children, you cannot come unto me. And it's ironic as I've watched my own grandchildren grow. 1, 2, and 3, there's that innocence and joy where they participate and they're afraid of nothing. Then we start to domesticate them in 4, 5, and 6, and they start to get afraid of dark and afraid of different things. And something had domesticated Gabriel. But when he was able to participate and get something in his bucket, he smiled, turned around, and that day, Gabriel participated. And I think that was really Christ talking to us. Let the kids come forth and be like little children. So I subbed for preschool. And that might be cutting out paper and making papier-mâché things and helping kids with snacks. And I subbed with the 3rd graders where Gabriel was, and I did 8th grade where we did science projects. And I think the joy of it all is just to remember what it's like to be young and learning and just approach them with that earnestness. And it usually worked. But the Catholic school system, so they're also pretty easy. Mm-hmm. Before I subbed, I worked in media. You said Tribune Towers for 20 years. I was at the Hartford Courant in Connecticut, and then Rochester, New York at the Gannett's flagship paper, and then in Minneapolis at the Star Tribune because I just didn't have enough snow in my life, so I kept going north. And then that newspapers, as you know, probably suffered huge layoffs when the internet became very much more the way to transmit news and advertising to people. So I went to the School for Journalists, which is in St. Petersburg, Florida. And in that role started a career center, and I was coaching journalists across the country that had lost their job. And if ever you want to see broken people, because that's a vocation. People think it's pretty famous because you see the world's greatest news broadcasters, but the print journalists are pretty humble, quiet people who really just want to preserve democracy and tell the truth when they're good at their job, and most of them are. And to have them work for 40 and 50 years and then all of a sudden be laid off, not because they weren't good at what they did, but just because money had been made by and lost by buying other newspapers and not keeping the focus where it should be. That kind of coaching had to be done with the heart, which is really just to listen to their story and then really try to guide them to identify their skills and show them how they can use them in other jobs so that they can be gainfully employed. It's a tough world we're in. I think observing and seeing where there's a need and then trying to respond to that with whatever talent we have is the only gift we can give each other. I know I've been a recipient at the church by people inviting me to read, in choir, by Virginia encouraging me to join choir. And it makes a huge difference. This is a family, and I think that's just terrific. So thank you all for that.